Had Fox News existed and been essentially the state-run TV during the Nixon era, there might not have been an impeachment of Richard Nixon. But there is this whole echo chamber that supports whatever the president says. What I find so astounding about the last year is how much this deeply flawed president could remake an entire political party in his own image.
And now tanks in the streets. You know, I mean, I laugh too. I mean, it's a funny premise. Comedian, we like a premise like that, ha ha ha. But it's not really funny. The idea, because you should not get used to the look of tanks in the streets.
Adam Schiff is not only a stone cold, hopeless loser, but he is one of the most corrupt, one of the most shameful, one of the most heinous individuals ever to serve in public office in America. And everything he's devoted his life to has been debunked, discredited, and discarded. He literally represents the face of failure. His sole achievement in life was fighting a losing war against Donald Trump, and now President Trump is in the White House, and Adam Schiff is the leader of a dying and dethroned movement.
Previously, I showed you how Trump called out Representative Adam Schiff for his double standards. But what I didn't show you was Trump taking it a step further, accusing Schiff of blowing things way out of proportion. Classic Schiff. The Democrats and the woke left have been on a mission to bring Trump down, using fear and panic as their weapons of choice. But here's the plot twist. Bill Maher, yes, that Bill Maher, once a staunch ally of Schiff, is finally seeing through the chaos and calling it out. And the backlash, it's nothing short of explosive. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and let's jump in.
But we do need to be mindful of the much bigger challenge facing the country right now. And that is, there is a systematic undermining of our system of checks and balances. Brick by brick, the walls are being taken down. The wall between the White House and the Justice Department, the way we are demeaning the press, and as you say, we're suggesting that there is no such thing as objective fact anymore. The way the administration says that a judge that rules against us is illegitimate. These are ways in which they're doing enormous damage to our system of government.
Right out of the gate, Schiff shifts into overdrive, blasting Trump's administration for allegedly undermining the press and the justice system. But that's pretty rich coming from Schiff, especially considering how the Biden administration treated the press while they were in power. I remember it clearly, people being canceled and deplatformed just for sharing their opinions. Funny how Schiff seems to have forgotten all that. Now he's blowing things out of proportion simply because his party is no longer in control. Thankfully, Bill Maher steps in with a much-needed dose of reality, calling out the hypocrisy for what it is.
And now tanks in the streets. You know, I mean, I laugh too. I mean, it's a funny premise. Comedian, we like a premise like that, ha ha ha. But it's not really funny. The idea, because you should not get used to the look of tanks in the streets. We don't have that look in America. When I've seen that look anywhere else in the world, it's never been good. And to me, this is like, yeah, let's get them used to that. Tanks in the streets.
Bill Maher doesn't pull any punches. He confronts Adam Schiff head-on, telling him that things aren't nearly as apocalyptic as he and his allies claim. In classic Maher style, he calls out Schiff and the left-leaning media for their relentless fear-mongering, especially their outrageous suggestion that Trump might roll tanks into the streets to silence political opponents. Tanks? Really? Clearly fed up with the hysteria, Maher reminds Schiff that this kind of over-the-top rhetoric doesn't just damage the Democratic Party, it poisons public discourse and erodes trust in the democratic process. His point is simple but devastating. Exaggerating threats for political gain only deepens division and gives Trump more ammo to fire back. If Democrats keep crying wolf, Maher warns, voters will eventually tune them out, and when a real threat emerges, no one will listen. It's a brutal dose of truth, and Schiff didn't seem prepared for it. Why? Because he's knee-deep in Trump derangement syndrome. Check this out.
Among the most difficult to deal with is the fact that people now simply get their information from different sources. Had Fox News existed and been essentially the state-run TV during the Nixon era, there might not have been an impeachment of Richard Nixon. But there is this whole echo chamber that supports whatever the president says. What I find so astounding about the last year is how much this deeply flawed president could remake an entire political party in his own image.
Schiff didn't stop at going after the former president. He also took a swipe at Fox News for daring to challenge his tired fact-challenged narrative. And that, right there, is the core issue with Schiff and his political allies. They can't handle opposing viewpoints. The moment someone strays from their script or questions their version of events, they're met with ridicule, name-calling, and outright demonization. It's a classic deflection tactic attack the messenger instead of engaging with the message. Rather than debate dissenting opinions, Schiff and his camp prefer to silence them. But love it or hate it, Fox News represents the voice of a significant portion of the American public. By vilifying the network simply for presenting a counterpoint, Schiff reveals what his side fears most: losing control of the narrative. And when that control slips, so does their hold on public trust. Fox News didn't take Schiff's accusations lightly. Even before Bill Maher weighed in, the network fired back hard. I'll play you Maher's response shortly, but first, listen to this blistering takedown.
Adam Schiff is not only a stone-cold, hopeless loser, but he is one of the most corrupt, one of the most shameful, one of the most heinous individuals ever to serve in public office in America. And everything he's devoted his life to has been debunked, discredited, and discarded. He literally represents the face of failure. His sole achievement in life was fighting a losing war against Donald Trump, and now President Trump is in the White House, and Adam Schiff is the leader of a dying and dethroned movement.
We all remember how dramatically Adam Schiff fell short in his crusade to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. As the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Schiff styled himself as the face of the resistance. But his efforts ultimately collapsed under the weight of exaggeration and partisanship. Time and again, he claimed to have seen direct evidence of Trump colluding with Russia, a claim that crumbled when the Mueller report found no criminal conspiracy. But Schiff didn't stop there. He cherry-picked quotes from Republican colleagues, took statements out of context, and spun a narrative designed for headlines, not for the truth. Rather than presenting an objective case, he turned his committee position into a stage for political theater. In doing so, he undermined the integrity of the very process he was meant to uphold, deepening the partisan divide he so often railed against. Critics weren't just doubtful, they saw a clear pattern: moral grandstanding cloaking deliberate misinformation, and history hasn't looked kindly on that legacy.
There is nothing new. We just get to hear Adam Schiff lie and rant and stuff like that, ask for more witnesses when it was actually his job, and he decided not to do it.
Well, Senator, when you say there's nothing new, obviously Democrats would push back and say, let's hear from John Bolton. Let's see if what he said in that videotape last August, where he said the phone call sounded like he was almost saying it was perfect or cordial, went very well, as the president has suggested with the Ukrainian president, or what he says in his book is true. Why not bring him in, hear something new, and settle this once and for all?
Well, first off, it'll never end. But they had a chance. The Democrats in the House had the chance to subpoena John Bolton. They're the ones that decided not to subpoena John Bolton. They're the ones that have decided to rush this case through, and then they said, oh, now we want you to go through the process of calling John Bolton.
That's what happens when your entire case is built on half-truths and political theater. Adam Schiff was practically pleading for John Bolton to testify, hyping him up as the key witness who could finally take Trump down over the Ukraine scandal. Schiff painted Bolton's testimony as the long-awaited smoking gun. But when the moment finally arrived when Bolton had a chance to speak, Schiff backed off. Why? Because it became clear that Bolton's actual testimony might not support Schiff's carefully crafted narrative. It was a stunning reversal. The same man who had demanded Bolton take the stand suddenly got cold feet. Why the sudden shift? Because if Bolton contradicted the storyline, the entire impeachment effort could collapse. And Schiff couldn't afford that risk. So instead of seeking the truth, he opted for silence, once again proving that in his world, political survival comes before honesty. Even worse, the media let it slide, treating Schiff's selective outrage as if it were standard political practice. But the public is catching on and the double standards aren't going unnoticed anymore.
Adam Schiff lies again. What will the Senate do about it? Adam Schiff lied again. We'll get into this a little bit more detail. And Politico actually was the website, a very liberal website that broke the story. And the story is this, that an oligarch whose name began with Z, who had ties to Burisma, in fact, may have been the chief dog over at Burisma, an oligarch, that Adam Schiff was trying to tie Trump surrogates and Rudy Giuliani into pressuring the president of Ukraine, whose name begins with Z too. But it had nothing to do with the president of Ukraine. But Adam Schiff had made that representation yesterday on the floor of the Senate to the senator.
Remember this one. Adam Schiff's obsession with removing Trump from the Oval Office sent him spiraling into a maze of wild theories and desperate logic jumps. At one point, he claimed a Russian oligarch must be connected to Trump. Why? Because the man had ties to Rudy Giuliani and, unbelievably, shared the same first letter in his name as the Ukrainian president. That was the smoking gun. Absurd? Completely. But Schiff didn't stop there. He went on to suggest that Trump was somehow using this oligarch as a go-between to pressure the Ukrainian president into accepting a secret deal with Russia. No hard evidence, no credible sources. Just baseless speculation spun into conspiracy. This wasn't investigative due diligence, it was a political witch hunt masquerading as a foreign policy concern. Schiff took random coincidences and tried to dress them up as damning proof, and in doing so, he showed yet again that when it comes to Trump, facts always seem to take a backseat to drama. The result? More division, less credibility, and a public that's increasingly tuning out the noise.
Okay, and finally, new rule, someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you fucked in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses, we know they are stupid, just don't say it.
If I were Adam Schiff, I'd seriously consider stepping back from the relentless misinformation about Trump and finally seek some recovery from this chronic case of Trump derangement syndrome. Let's be real that obsessive hatred is a big part of what cost the Democrats the White House in the first place. The nonstop attacks, the baseless narratives, the media echo chamber, it all backfired. If I were in Schiff's shoes, I'd stop writing off Trump voters as ignorant or brainwashed and start treating them with respect. Not through pandering, but by being honest, transparent, and rooted in reality. Because when you insult millions of Americans simply for voting differently, you don't change minds, you push people further away. It's time to stop preaching to the choir and start actually listening to the crowd. Americans are tired of being talked down to. If Schiff and others on the left truly want to lead, they should try something radical: honesty. The truth is, Trump didn't break America, he exposed the cracks that had long been papered over by those pretending to hold it all together. And if the left keeps doubling down on delusion, they'll keep losing the very people they claim to represent.
I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, I mean person who menstruates. You're the teachers' union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke. You just lost a crazy contest to an actual crazy person.
Bill Maher raises yet another hard truth. One major reason Schiff and his allies lost ground is because of increasingly bizarre policies and fringe ideologies. Chief among them, the left's insistence that gender is entirely fluid, that a woman can become a man, and vice versa, yet somehow, no one could define what a woman even is. To the average American just trying to raise a family, pay the bills, and live with basic common sense, this wasn't progress, it was absurd. It didn't feel inclusive. It felt elitist, disconnected, and wildly impractical. Instead of broadening the tent, these talking points alienated voters. Maher points out a crucial flaw. When you stop making sense to regular people, you lose them. Fast. You can't call yourself the party of science and then avoid answering basic biological questions. Voters noticed they rolled their eyes and walked away. And now the left is stunned that they've lost ground. Maybe it's time they stop blaming Trump and start rethinking their message. In the end, Schiff's theatrics, fear-mongering, and tone-deaf politics didn't rally support, they repelled it. Maher's blunt reality checks exposed the cracks in the narrative. If Democrats want to win back trust, they'll need less drama and more honesty. Because right now, voters aren't buying the hysteria, they're hungry for truth, clarity, and common sense. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you appreciated this breakdown of woke politics and media spin, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a post. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.